Hey everybody, LadyLibertyStacker back for another video. A couple things I want to go over with you on today's video, and today is June 20th, 2020, are my recent items that I picked up at flea markets and such that are ready for sale, and also the ins and outs of buying vintage cast iron. And first of all, though, before we go into the vintage cast iron, and there's some pitfalls, so it's very important that you watch all the way through, guys, because I have a lot of information. If you don't watch the whole thing, you could miss a very important piece, and it could cost you a lot of money or time and frustration down the line, so you want to watch all the way through. All right, I do have some pieces that I have restored. They're all done. They have about 5 to 6 coatings of seasoning on, vegetable oil. But anyway, I want to show you what I have here. First up is a Griswold number 5 large block logo skillet. It was made probably from 1930 to 1939, I think. I mean, I've got most of these are made in that time frame. This has an early handle on it, no heat ring. This one would work better on induction because you have more contact with the stovetop. Some of them with the heat ring may not perform as well, but I don't know for sure. Anybody with an induction out there, if you know that if cast iron skillets with a heat ring work, please let me know, because I don't really know. I know they work through the magnet process. There's a magnet underneath, and because these are all magnetized, that's how the heat is transferred from the heating element on the induction stovetop to the cookware. That's why you need stainless steel, copper, or iron. Okay, so this is a Griswold number 5. It's very rare in this condition. It's got a beautifully smooth cooktop and handle, and this one does not move, does not spin when you move the handle, has a teeny tiny little wobble. Most of them do, to be quite honest with you. It's very rare that they don't have something, but it doesn't impede cooking at all. So anyway, this is a Griswold number 5, so we'll go ahead and put that to the side. Next up is a antique griddle, unbranded or unmarked number 7. And I like the design on this. It has a cool teardrop, very thin surface, and you can tell it has a heat ring in the back. That was made to go with a certain kind of cook stove back in the day. It's got a gate mark, so you know it was made in the 1800s. It could be as old as the Civil War. I have no idea. It was black and rusty when I picked it up. I was able to strip it. There's some little bit of staining left on it. But at any rate, I wasn't able to really get that off without maybe possibly damaging this. You don't want it to soak too long in vinegar. Vinegar pretty much just gets the rust off. You scrub it, you monitor it, put it back in, monitor it, scrub it, and then you're done. It's got a little bit of pitting on the bottom. It's very characteristic of pieces like this. And it does not spin when you push the handle. It has a little bit of a wobble on it. It's an old piece. It could be 150 years old. Does wobble a little bit, but it has a fairly flat surface, and it's got a flat cooking surface. So there we be. There is that one. The next up is a number, actually no, it's a chef skillet. This is an unmarked Wagner chef skillet. You can tell Wagner always put the thumbprint here, or the thumb, what do they call it? Thumb rest. I guess that would be the best way. And they have that square handle that you see in the square skillets, and there's a breakfast skillet. This one is beautifully dark chocolate brown. It was stripped down to the bare metal, and it was brought back with 6 coats of seasoning. It has chef skillet, 9-inch, made in the USA, and it's got a little bit of a casting flaw right here around 430 in the pan. But I was able to season it enough where it's not going to impede your cooking. It has a flat cook surface, both on the cook surface and on the bottom, but it will spin a little bit. I think it was the way these guys were made. It will move on the cooktop, but they were all made that way, or most of them were. The other one I had did the same thing, but it didn't quite move as much. But they have a tendency to move because they are a chef skillet. Next up is a Griswold number 7. Got this also at a flea market. It has been stripped down and 6 coats of seasoning. It's a number 7, large block logo, cast iron skillet. Got a little bit of pitting. It does have a little bit of movement. but it won't spin all the way around. It might spin all the way. I'm trying to remember if it does, but it's got a little bit of movement, a little bit of wobble, but it's an excellent shape, and it's fairly smooth on the bottom of the cook surface, or flat, if you can see that there. Let me move it up to the, you can see. So it's going to it's going to heat evenly as long as you gradually heat it up. But this one is in excellent condition, no cracks, no serious pitting. Your basic Griswold number 7, and made in the 30s, I think 1930 to 1939, somewhere in there. So, and this one here has 2 standard business cards. Will correct the movement on it. And then next up you have, this is the best find. This is at the flea market back at the end of May. And this one here is a very smooth Griswold number 8, large slant logo cast iron skillet with an external heat ring here, and beautiful piece. The other one I have has a wave line across the bottom, but that's typical with this series of skillets. It was the way they casted it. This one appears to have a fold, but there, I mean, a little bit of that looks like maybe a casting flaw or something, but generally speaking, it's very solid skillet. Does not move at all when the handle is pushed. Very little movement. It has maybe 1/16 to 1/32 of an inch would be the quantifiable, but it has got wonderfully smooth cooking surface. So that is very rare, and these were made, I think, in around 1920. This is a 704M in the 20, I think 1920 to 1940, somewhere in there. So anyway, that's that. So then, the other thing I want to talk to you guys about is the pitfalls of buying vintage cast iron. There's all kinds of pitfalls. We buy vintage cast iron because maybe somebody gave you a piece, maybe you inherited it from mom, dad, or grandma. Maybe you like it. It's lighter. It's lighter than other types of modern cast iron for the same size of a pan, generally speaking. And there's 3 examples of what you don't want when you're out. Well, this one isn't that great of an example. I thought it was at first, but we'll start with this one first. This one I thought had a little bit more movement. It does. It doesn't spin all the way around, but it does have a little bit of a wobble on a flat glass cooktop. This is an old, you wonder what this is. It's a ruler, which I recommend taking these with you to a flea market or garage sale or barn sale where you can't test it for spin on a countertop or on a cement floor, and you want to see how well it does. But this one is an Erie, 2nd series Erie with the quotation marks, no model number here, just the size and a maker's mark. It has an external heat ring. It's got a reinforced ribbed handle here, and this was made between 1886 and 1892, and an antique truly. And this one has a little bit of pitting in it, but a very nice cooking surface and a little bit of a wobble. And my guess would be 2 to 3 business cards would correct the movement. It'll heat evenly, but you know, if you're looking for perfectly flat, you're going to be looking for a long time, and there's a lot of cast iron you're not going to buy because a lot of it out there will have a little bit of movement. But you want to see how it does. So anyway, you want to take a ruler with you, and if you look at this ruler, you look at it, and it's a fairly smooth bottom. There's a little bit of air on the right-hand side, so you're talking probably 1/16 of an inch to 3/32 of an inch on that. And you can do the same thing on the bottom. You can see how much, and the cooking surface on the bottom here is very, very flat. So it's going to heat up nice and evenly, and it should be fine. And it doesn't, it moves a little bit more than, you know, one that's totally flat. You push the handle, it will spin. But this will try to help you a little bit. You'll see it on the bottom, and you can see on the left side there's a little bit of air between the ruler and the skillet. That's what you want to look for. Okay, there's that one. The next is a little skillet. This seems to be a little Griswold. It says cast iron skillet number 0, and this, you know, Griswold back in the day did make a skillet like this. It was a toy a toy or a salesman demo when they would go out on the road to show their products. And I thought it was cute. I thought it was real. It looked like it was real. But when you really look at it, it's got very sloppy casting. The font isn't all the same on Skillet. K is different. The W in Griswold is different. And the USA is more spread out than it should be. And you have here, just the logo itself is a little sloppy. And the surface of the pan is a little sloppy. It's not even. It's just messy, sloppy casting. And but believe it or not, these have a collectible value. Even the fakes do, because they're not bad. They're just not. It's a reproduction or a fake, whatever you want to call it. But they do have a market value. But there's a lot of these on eBay. And only one other one is labeled a reproduction, only because I messaged that seller. And you can tell a fake one because they have a grooved handle. It's the third type. The other two are less likely to be a reproduction, but you have like a maker's mark that lays on its side underneath the heat ring, and you can tell if you know that's not real. So I'm going to show you a picture. One of my subs lent me a picture of one of hers. Let me go ahead and get into it. Okay, here we go, and I'll hold this up and you can see it. Let's do this. You can see there, it's a small little number 0. You can see the font is all the same. You can see that there. The W is the same. The K is the same. We'll go over and take a look at the whole back. We can see the bottom part. Everything is nice and neat. And you can look at the W on mine. See the little W? It's not really the same size. Then the handle is different. And it's got a number, a maker's mark right there in the handle. It's got, you know, a slight little rib that goes into the sidewall. And typical Griswold. And that is the real deal. If you look at the surface, here's the surface. It's very smooth. And again, very smooth here. Even casting. Where this, you can see where it's just not real even. So they do have a value, but the real ones are worth over $100. This one is worth anywhere from, I would say, $25 to $45, somewhere in there. Depending, this would probably be the top end of the range because it's been restored. And it's a cute little skillet. You can still use it, very usable. Doesn't spin when you push the handle, and it'd be either a great ashtray, a great display piece, or you could melt butter in there for your shrimp or your lobster. There you go. A good little use for it. But anyway, that's the difference between a real one and a fake one. I'll put that down. And finally, the deal breaker, if you find one of these out, I didn't purchase this correctly. This is an antique. It is also an Erie. You can see there, Series 2. It's number 8. It's got a maker's mark. Kind of looks like almost looks like a backwards C or a crescent moon, something like that. Somebody may know, but this was Series 2 with a reinforced rib handle made, again, between 1886 and 1892. There was about 6 years in there where these were made. It's got an external heat ring, and if other than the flaw in this, this would be like the perfect skillet, worth well over $200. It doesn't move. It sits flat. There's like hardly any wobble at all. It's like the perfect skillet. These other ones have a little bit of movement. Most of them I told you do. This one doesn't, but it's got a little problem. And what I didn't do was when I purchased it, I had thick gloves on because the last vendor had oil all over the skillets, and I didn't want to get my hands all yucky and covered with oil and dirt and grime and all of that. So I had gloves on. They were too thick. But what you should do, sometimes when you can't see it, it had old seasoning and not a lot of crud, but it had old seasoning on it, and I probably could have felt the cracks. And you just take your fingers and rub all along. Rub the bottom, rub the cooking surface, rub everything. And there is a crack right there. You can feel it, and it does go through. You can see that there. And then over by the handle, you've got a crack here and a crack here. Their hairline. This one actually goes through. I don't know if you can see it on camera. I can see it. This one barely goes through. Very, very, very hardly detectable on the outside. But that would be a deal breaker. I mean, I'll go ahead and list it because somebody may want it for a display piece. It'll have some market value. I have no idea what. But it's like, other than the cracks, it's like the perfect skillet. I mean, no movement whatsoever. It sits flat, no wobble. Just, you know, unfortunate. I was just heartsick when I found that out. So anyway, that is something to be aware of. Also, the ring test. This thing rings like a bell. You take a wooden spoon, rings like a bell. So the ring test doesn't always work. Inspect it with your fingers. If you don't want to do that, wear a very thin pair of gloves, very thin, so you can feel the cracks. If you can't see the skillet well enough to see any cracks in it, and they're upcharging you for a piece like this, and the charge is too high and you can't see it, don't buy it. Just walk away. Unless you can afford to lose the money, just don't do it. So anyway, that's my tips for you today. I don't want to make the video too long, but if you have any questions at all about the pieces I have, I can be emailed at LadyLibertyStacker@gmail.com. Please leave a comment or question below. Remember to like the video, give it a thumb up, subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you watching. Thanks, and go make it a great day.